Right now, it is time to bring in our good friends. Hopefully, knock on wood as I knock my head, we'll have Janet Banco and also Cynthia with us. Are you both with us?
I'm here. Hi.
Hey,
That's a yes.
darn,
Darn.
darn,
It's amazing.
it worked. All right. Well, good morning. And looking at the front page of the Lakeville Journal, it is color, 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 and stories.
That's right. You know, Patrick Sullivan, who has a new camera, is exceeding himself with his great photos. And I really think that's one of the, like, that photo just really captures the weirdest graduation ever, literally, for the class of 2020 at Housatonic Valley Regional High School, where Lime Rock Park generously offered the racetrack as a place to have the graduation, helped them organize it, and the speaker spoke from the tower along the Samposi Straightaway, and students in their cars lined up. And Patrick's photo, for those of you who are not looking at the paper, as we are, shows two young men sitting on the roofs of their car. I guess they've emerged from the sunroofs, and they've got Class of 2020 stickers across the top of their front windshields. Yeah. So a very unusual graduation. We have the link if you want to watch the whole ceremony live. And they left Lime Rock Park, paraded over to the high school, where the teachers stood out on the oval and waved them on.
All right, that was for that. And then we'll go over to the Black Lives Matter picture that was taken in North Canaan. But basically, young people put out these incredible sit-ins or protests, whatever you want, just about in every town throughout our tri-state region. And they really were almost all organized by young people, which is simply terrific.
And not just young people, but young people from our local high school.
Yeah.
It's not as though they were people who are coming in from out of town. And some of them went to one protest and then used what they learned there to organize another protest. So it really was inspiring to watch. But, of course, demographically correctly, Mary John, who is one of our fantastic summer interns this year, observed most of the people that were there were older people. Yeah. They were, maybe 10% were young people, but, that's the way it is up here in the northwest corner. But, also a nice intergenerational thing where we can all pull together for a better world.
But I also think that's one of the reasons that if young people get out, if people establish something, then people 50, 55, 60 will get out and also add their weight to the opinion. I think that's what's so great about it being all done by school students that are going to either college or in senior year in high school. It really is a way to bring something national locally because, as Dr. Henry Kissinger said at one point, all things are local. But anyway.
Let's hope they all vote, too.
Yeah.
Not a year to mess around.
Yep. Then there's a great story if you're following Major League Baseball, starting with the 60-day season on July 27th. Willie Yan is in the major leagues for the Baltimore Orioles. And, of course, they're at the bottom of the totem pole. He was told by the Orioles he'd be paid through June. But, of course, with a 60-day major league season now finally put together, and teams trying to cut back on their minor league teams, which is absolutely insane, the future for Willie is uncertain. I mean, because he doesn't know.
Right, and so this story came together from a bunch of different directions. One was that I had heard a story, I can't remember, on a podcast or something, where they were talking about minor league baseball and how the teams were had already been looking to downsize and to cut salaries, and that they were sort of saying, and they were being accused of thinking that COVID was an opportunity to do this and have sort of the cover of night in which to do it. So Willie Yan, of course, a local hero, a kid that all of us from Sharon have known since he was a tot, and a wonderful kid, was an intern with us last year, continued on as a reporter, really one of those charismatic young people who can just walk into a room and galvanize everybody. And so he's teaching a class at the Marvelwood School in Kent, which is offering free classes online for high school students, including graduates from this year. And one of the classes is Willie is teaching the history of baseball. So in addition to being a great journalist with a journalism degree from UConn, he also has been substitute teaching. So it's going to be a great class. So Shane Stamfel, who had been an intern last summer and loves baseball, interviewed Willie about the class he's teaching, and that story's in next week's paper. But he talked to him also about a team that Willie organized of local players, kids he played in high school with, and also minor league players from the area. And they put together their own team, and they're sponsored by Great Falls Brewery in North Canaan. And they have their first game tonight in Hartford at the Yard Goat Stadium, which Shane will cover for us for next week's paper.
All right. I remember when he was signed by UConn in the big press conference they had at the high school.
Big deal.
And you know what? It was interesting when he was signed by UConn. If you look at the years before he played at UConn and the years he was there, he was a major contributor, and that is why I think he does have a good shot at the major leagues, because he really helped turn that program around when he was there.
Yeah. And a school with a great history of baseball, as we often talk about.
Yeah, and he's just and also he's if you would think about making a movie and an image of somebody you want to represent baseball. He's it. He really is.
Yeah,
all
great
right,
kid.
We'll move over to the story done by Shane about on the graduation notebook. Graduates uncertain about the year ahead.
So we had said to Shane, because I always, there's a lot of young people around here, and I sometimes forget where they are in their school careers. So I had said to him, "Oh, Shane, do you want to go help Patrick Sullivan cover the graduation?" He said, "Well, I'm probably going to be in my car." We're like, "Oh my gosh, of course, Shane is graduating this year." So congratulations to Shane and all the students in class of 2020. But he did talk to his friends about what it was like for them to sort of end their high school careers in uncertainty and to not really be sure about what's ahead of them in autumn. And he spoke to one young man who's joining the Air Force. He talked to some young women. It's a very interesting article, very thoughtful, as Shane always is, and puts a face on some of the uncertainty that we've been hearing about.
It's one. Can you imagine being a high school senior and graduating? But how about being a college senior and getting set to go out into the job world right now?
No jobs. Yeah.
It's just you think of it, and the thought for these students, both in high school and in college, is staggering. All right, we had Brian Ross on today. He is now a member, doing a show for us every week called Real
Nice.
News. But he has also got 2 appearances coming up at the Hotchkiss Library with their summer book signing 2.0 virtual season. He's got a nice session coming up with journalist Michael Isikoff.
That's right. And so we have an article on that on A2. And Brian Ross, just the loveliest person, and has been very generous in meeting with our summer interns also and talking to them about network news and about making documentaries, and is on the board of trustees for the Hotchkiss Library of Sharon, and is doing an interview with Michael Isikoff, and another one that's coming up, and I've already forgotten who it is. I bet you remember it.
I don't remember it, but I know it once again, it more deals with more investigative news.
Right.
He's a nice guy. We've been trying to get together for a long time.
He's busy.
But no, what I'm crazy. Well, Jill did it in about 38 seconds.
Well done. Yeah, he's very willing to help, though. It's hard to lock him down.
Yeah, it's Jill.
It was funny because I called you, and then I found out that you had basically said to Matt. I found this out yesterday that you had said to Maddie, "Oh, gee, I'd really like to do something." And she didn't. Nobody spoke, but that's.
But boom! But it happened.
It happened.
And so we have a funny photo here. Not a really beautiful photo of Beth and Jack Eisler, who are beloved Salisbury residents, and their son and his wife have been up here during the quarantine, as so many adult children are. She was pregnant. The daughter-in-law was pregnant and had her baby at home, which and I just want to say, Sharon Hospital, fully functional and very safe, and no reason not to have it at the hospital, but they chose to have it at home, which is a very beautiful thing. And I would have thought it was the first time in 120 years somebody had done that, but apparently it's been 3 years. But we have a beautiful photo of the happy parents.
All right. The best news of all is we've gotten press releases from area libraries, and you've got a big story on this, about the area libraries are starting to open up again. They have strict rules, but it's great to see them opening up again.
It's interesting, too, that they're all doing it in a slightly different way. And the only library we didn't hear back from is Cornwall, which has had a very active online schedule going for the quarantine period, with a lot of programs by Roxana Robinson, the novelist, who's been very generous with her her time and her energy with that library. So nothing on their website yet, but presumably they're going to be opening up soon also. But the other 5 libraries, we have information here in this article on the libraries opening up. And Janet, I'd like to have Janet talk about the child care centers opening, because I know that's a particular area of expertise of yours in caring.
Well, it is time for young parents to be able to have access to child care again, it's a difficult situation because as these centers are opening, it's an experiment. They're doing the best they can. They're so accustomed to using very high standards of safety and cleanliness always, but this is a particular challenge. So do be thinking of all of them, and this is a story about who's opening and what they're offering, and this is the way that young parents can go back to work.
It's kind of an exciting time, but a weird time with all these the way people have to open up. Whether it's restaurants, whether it's childcare, whether it's retail businesses.
Hair salons.
I mean, Millerton is having their big thing this weekend, al fresco in Millerton, so you can see all the different businesses that are open once again and how they're opening and stuff like that. So everybody's being very interesting the way they do this.
And, they have to be very responsible. We're hearing the stories about other states that have opened too soon or not carefully enough, or, we just have to get accustomed to life that's different.
That's it, and follow the rules. The states that are having trouble are the states where, but mainly young people, are not following the rules, and because there's so many young people, they might not get sick or they might get sick, but they still spread it. They still spread it.
So old people, and that's.
But really, the figures do show that if you wear the mask and you do social distancing, the states that are doing it are doing fine, and you just can't argue with success. And
so we have an article coming up in our next week's paper, July 2nd. The governors of New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut all made a statement yesterday afternoon saying anybody who's coming in from states that have a high rate of infection is asked to self-quarantine for 2 weeks. And I thought, my first thought was like, does that mean people from New York City? Like, are we not allowed to go in and out of New York? Because that was
New York is not one of those states.
I know. So I emailed the governor's office, and they were like, oh, no, absolutely. New York is very proud of the fact that it's brought its infection rate down. And so we have the link to the state website, which has the list of states. I think there are right now 7 of them.
Yeah, the
primarily in the South.
Yeah, the major ones are Florida, South Carolina, North Carolina, and
Texas, Utah, Alabama, Arkansas.
But anybody that's a snowbird that's coming up from Florida, and in New York, and this all begins at midnight tonight. By the way, the states are going to do this beginning midnight tonight.
I think
Yeah, and in New York, it has actually a fines fee set up. The first time you're a violator is $2,000. Second time it's $10,000. They're not going to stop every car, but certain people will be stopped. And if they're stopped and they're saying that they're going to, they'll be checked to see that they're self-quarantined. The state will assign somebody to call them and check on them to make sure that they are staying in. So it's
those contact tracers can do that.
It's serious business. All right, public spaces and beaches are open. With some rules.
Again, with some rules. And Salisbury was one of the first beaches to open. I believe they had a very quiet opening, even though they were nervous that there was going to be some pushback from people. A lot of people from different towns really love that Salisbury Lake. It's very deep, it's very clean, and it's a good lake for swimming across. But this is just the year that everybody's going to have to find an alternative way to deal with it. So everybody's being asked to not come and spend all day at the beach, to come in small groups, and somebody was saying to me the other day that they were talking to a friend, and their friend had said, we're going to pick up the kids, and we're all going to go down to the beach in Salisbury. And these are people who lived in, I can't remember where, I guess Sharon. And I was like, well, that's going to be an interesting conversation there. So don't really plan on doing that. If you're not a Salisbury resident, if you don't have a Salisbury sticker, this is not a year when you're invited to come into that beach. And this is true, I think, with all the beaches. They all have different protocols, but the essential protocol is don't plan on spending the whole day at the beach. Do social distance, wear a mask when you're on the beach, don't wear a mask when you're in the water, etc.
All right, we'll go on to the editorial page right now. The next step for young families during the pandemic.
Right. It's an important issue for our area and, of course, the whole state and region. But this is incredible to think. Anyone who had young children who have grown older now, think about having no child care from March 16th until now and what that would mean to your lives. Even if your places of business where you work were open, it's a much different situation if you don't have child care. You need to be able to be there to care for your kids. So this is a big step. It's been hard for these child care centers. If they were not able to tap into money outside of what they would usually have received in tuition, they're really at risk because remember, they don't get funds from our taxpayer dollars the way that the public schools do. They are small businesses that are always on the edge. So they really needed to find support. Many did through grants or through government money or online funding campaigns, but now there are challenges here for them to be able to reopen and keep everybody safe, including the teachers and the kids and the families. And it's a time when we all have to be very aware of what these centers mean to our communities and keep them in mind as they're opening. And if you can help them with a donation, do that.
All right. And letters.
Letters, plenty of letters, all different topics, which is great. We have Bruce Valentine telling us that Peter Steiner had poor taste in the cartoon about the Trump rally. Elaine Hecht is telling us how Tim Abbott gives the reader a full perspective on the out-of-doors and wildlife, and really, really great to hear from readers, no matter the opinion. John Baruti on Lime Rock Park and saying it can't be 1959 forever, and it should not be. And we have a really thoughtful letter from G.A. Mudge and Sharon about safe voting for the 2020 elections and how critical it is for voters to be able to feel they can go out and vote and not become ill. So there's lots of information in this letter, and do think about it and be aware of what our state is doing.
All right. And, of course, we're going to look back 100 years ago today, and why not take a look at the first one on the list? W.W. Horty of Winstead spent Sunday at his home. Okay.
In Salisbury, right?
I think it was a slow.
Okay.
It was a slow news week. Come on, we all go through it. We have to find those stories. We know that. But if last week's cartoon got a letter, maybe this one's will too. But once again, it's a cartoon that when you look at it, it not only makes you laugh and smile, but it also makes you think. And that's what people, some people don't understand what cartoons are all about.
Some people don't understand what humor or satire is all about, but that's
I can understand that if you're a Trump supporter, for instance, that you might not find these cartoons funny, but this is it, and this is what you're going to find in our paper. So, this is what we are glad to have from Peter Steiner, and they are good cartoons, as you say. They make you think as well as smile.
And then you've got and here's what's great with it. Along with it, you do take the letters, but you also have your viewpoint columnists that run the range on just about everything.
That's right. And so this week we have Matt Gordon, who's an architect and landscape designer in Lakeville. Many people know him, talking about what is on so many minds right now, everyone's mind. Unanswered questions on the current protests. And so he really does get deep into thinking about each situation and what has come of it and what should come of it. So do give that a read, and we're happy to hear from anybody who's thinking more about it, disagrees, agrees. We'd love to hear more.
And then opposite that, you have more pictures of course,
the
graduates and things like that. Well, let's take. We have about 6 minutes left, as a matter.
Oh,
of fact.
wow!
But we'll to compass. But one of the greatest things I learned this week, and put it up, is that Michael Berkeley has gotten a job as a musical director, and it's right here in our own area. I was always afraid that he would get a job and
someplace else,
and leave our area, and that would have been a big loss. But so you've got a big story on this.
Well, it's a big story because it's a big deal. As you say, everybody loves Michael Berkeley around here. He's been, he came up here for Sharon Playhouse, left there for a while, came back to them, is still doing the Divas shows, which are enormously popular. He has been the director of the Houstonic musical theater shows for several years now. If you've ever watched this guy work with kids, it's really unbelievable. He's got such a gift for understanding them, for working with them,
and honing their talents. It's just fantastic.
Yeah, and it's very important to him that the young people learn the history that contributes to the play so that it's not just like, hey, let's put on a musical. He's like, this is what the world was like at this time. He's really extraordinary. And he also is able to, like, when you go see these shows, they're super fun to watch because he can look at the class and say, here's what their strengths are. And just, even if it's just like, these girls are just beautiful and love to dance, and let's make them dancers. Or these young men are just funny and like to do shtick, and we'll just have them do shtick. He just really can capture whatever the strength is of the cast that he's working with. So he's been doing all this great work in the region. As Marshall said, we're always kind of worried that he's going to get snapped up and find something, more permanent, like a single thing. And so now he's found that it's at the Kent's Marvelwood School, which has a very strong theater department, and he's going to be their musical director. But he promises that he will continue to do divas in summer for the Sharon Playhouse, and that he will continue to work with the students at Houstonic Valley Regional High School, which is a big deal. Like, that's a really important program, and he's a really important part of it with Lori Belter. They've been great supporters of that program and helped bring it back to life after a many-year hiatus. So we're super excited about that.
I first met him with when the Rodericks put on The Music Man at the Sharon Playhouse, which basically started the revival of it. And
he worked with you,
and he was the music director, and the job. I got a position that you had to sing and dance in, and I was frightened. And who did I have to work with? But I had to work with Michael Berkeley. And he made me feel comfortable enough, along with the star of the show, who went on after that show to be on Broadway, which was pretty amazing.
Wow.
So they got me through it. Those two and the stage manager. But Michael Berkeley can work with people of all ages and make them feel comfortable.
And he's got unbelievable energy. If you've ever spent any time with him, this guy, like when he says, like if anybody else is like, sure, I can do, the Kent School and do with the Marvelwood School and do Houstonic Musical Theater, I wouldn't believe it. But Michael actually could. He's really an enormously energetic person. So we're all very lucky that he'll be remaining in the area. The Marvelwood students are very lucky, and Lucy's very lucky.
And you mentioned the Sharon Playhouse. Well, they're going to start off. They're going to do some stuff with drive-in theater in the parking lot and drive-in cabarets.
Right. And they're working on my friend Dave has been. They're doing little videos of people singing. So I won't give away a lot of it, but they're putting together some fun videos.
There's going to be some themed movies and stuff and themed videos. They're doing a lot. I helped them acquire a small little transmitter so people can listen to it in their cars, as well as go outside. So it's part of what I think most businesses are trying to do around here, and that is be open and be accessible to the public and hope that they come and support them again.
Right, and have a little fun. Robert Levenstein and Ellen Emma Wager are really guys who know how to put on a show, and that's just what they're doing with unbelievable energy.
All right. You also have a story by you, Cynthia, about a black artist.
It's not just a black artist, too. It's James Barron Art down in Kent. I've known James since I was in my 20s. He's a wonderful guy and really deeply in his heart always a supporter of black artists and the black community, and has consistently shown work by black artists at his gallery in Kent. The gallery is no longer at its center of town space. You have to call him up and make an appointment, but it's just, James, speaking of natural teachers, James is a great teacher. He would love to walk you through the show and talk to you about it, and it's always a learning experience. I'm hoping to go down either this weekend or next weekend and see the work of Winfred Rembert, who is an artist that was originally shown at Troutbeck, which has had some really interesting shows. And Troutbeck, of course, has a very important history with civil rights. The Spingarns used to have meetings there that led to the development, I think, of the NAACP. And Winfred Rembert is a guy who had a very difficult, sort of classic, growing up in the racist South life, ended up on a chain gang after taking part in a civil rights protest, learned how to tool leather while he was in prison, got out of prison, just narrowly escaped being lynched, and then in his later life has begun doing these incredible colored tapestries, like the Bayeux tapestry, just telling the story of his life and of the black rights struggle. So that's the show that's up now. Do not be shy to email James. He would love to have you come down. He would love to talk you through the show.
One of the things that we have left this summer is going to art galleries and going to these special things that
are opening up. Yeah,
just like what's going on at the drive-in theater in Millerton. in Armenia were this weekend on Saturday and Sunday. In the back of pickup trucks, there's going to be a Broadway review of a show that was going to do the review in New York, but they can't. So their first showing of it is going to be at the Armenia Theater on the back of 5 pickup trucks.
Great.
Once again, people will stay in their cars, and then there's 2 movies after that. A business is trying to do things differently to get more people to come out and open up and enjoy some of the things of summer.
Got to rent some convertibles.
If car makers were smart, they would have a backlog of convertibles that they could sell now, and they could probably sell a lot of them.
Yeah, I'd love to mention, don't forget to look through the classifieds. Our help wanted ads are growing, so businesses are opening, and they're starting to advertise for new positions, too. So if anybody needs full or part-time work, take a look.
And I think it's
tag sales, too, which is exciting.
Yeah, we have tax.
I think it's one of the things that we as media can do, both in newspapers and on air, is to support in any way we can and go above and beyond and help these businesses, because they now have to make it or break it in the next 4 months because it's a long winter around here. So I think it's part of our job not only to inform people and keep people aware of the news, but to really help whatever way we can these businesses, because they need all the help in the world to reopen.
That's
When
for
you think
sure.
about it,
Could not
in
agree
a sense,
more.
it was, luckier that the quarantine happened during a relatively quiet period up here. But now that summer is here, this is really, it's like Christmas at this time of year. This is really when the businesses need your help.
All right, and that's why we're here, guys. We'll speak to you next week.
Thank you so much.
Thanks. Have a good week.
That is This Week in the Lakeville Journal. You can find them at tricornernews.com on the web.